An 8-year-old boy walks into a courtroom and silences everyone, the judge, the lawyers, even the jury. No law degree, no suit, just a folder, a heart full of courage and the truth. What he said in that courtroom didn't just save his mother's life, it shocked the entire nation. You're about to witness the moment a child became a legend. It was supposed to be just another regular day for Kendra Williams, a 34-year-old single mother living in the south side of Atlanta, Georgia. She woke up before sunrise, packed her son's lunch, braided his hair, kissed him on the forehead, and headed off to work at a local department store where she'd been employed for over 6 years. Kendra wasn't just a worker. She was the backbone of that store, always arriving early, staying late, helping others, and never, not even once, had she taken a sick day unless absolutely necessary. To her coworkers, she was loyal. To her son Jayden, she was a superhero. But behind her smile and determination was a mountain of stress. Kendra worked 2 jobs, the department store during the day and cleaning offices in the evenings. All of this was to provide a better life for her only child, Jayden, who had dreams of becoming a lawyer. Every penny she earned went into rent, groceries, and saving for his future. So when she was called into her manager's office one rainy Friday afternoon, she had no idea her world was about to turn upside down. The manager, Mr. Curtis, was waiting for her with a security officer standing beside him. On the desk was a printed report and a grainy photo from a surveillance camera. Kendra sat down, confused. Then came the words that crushed her. "We've reviewed some footage and found evidence suggesting that you may have been stealing merchandise over the past few weeks. We're terminating your employment, and charges will be filed." Kendra's heart dropped. "What? Stealing? Me?" she said, her voice cracking. "I've never taken anything. I don't even take the store discount if I can't afford it." But the manager wasn't listening. The security officer escorted her out in front of her coworkers. No questions asked, no time to explain. She was humiliated, in shock, and scared out of her mind. The only thing she could think of was Jayden. How would she provide for him now? The next few days were a blur. She received a formal letter stating she was being charged with petty theft and workplace fraud. No solid proof, no physical evidence, just blurry footage of a woman who looked vaguely like her and a report from a fellow employee claiming they had seen her near the stockroom after hours. Kendra tried to explain her innocence, but no one was listening. To make matters worse, she couldn't afford a private attorney. The court assigned her a public defender, someone clearly overworked and disinterested in her case. Their only advice? Take a plea deal. You get less time. But Kendra refused. "Why should I plead guilty to something I didn't do?" she asked. "What will I tell my son? That the system is broken and I gave up?" At home, Jayden noticed everything. The tears, the silence, the unopened bills, the dinner portions getting smaller. One night, he heard his mother crying softly in the kitchen. He peeked around the corner, and for the first time in his life, he saw the strongest person he knew completely broken. "Mom," he whispered, "are you going to jail?" Kendra knelt down and hugged him tightly. "No, baby. Mommy didn't do anything wrong. I promise." Jayden didn't say anything right away. He just sat at the table, thinking. He had always been different, curious, sharp, a deep thinker, even at 8 years old. And he had a habit of watching courtroom shows on TV, mimicking the lawyers, memorizing legal phrases, and asking questions that would make even adults pause. The next day, while Kendra was out trying to meet with her lawyer, Jayden began researching everything he could about workplace theft laws, court procedure, and evidence requirements, all on the old tablet his mom had saved up to buy him last Christmas. Every night after that, Jayden would sit beside his mother, asking questions, reading legal documents out loud, and highlighting parts of her case that didn't make sense. He noticed timestamp issues, vague statements from witnesses, and a lack of any physical evidence. Kendra thought he was just trying to help her feel better. But what she didn't realize is that Jayden wasn't just reading. He was preparing. From the outside, Jayden Williams looked like any other 8-year-old kid. He loved chocolate chip pancakes, wore superhero pajamas to bed, and carried a toy dinosaur in his backpack for protection. But behind those bright eyes and playful smile was a mind sharper than most adults could even imagine. Even at the age of 3, Jayden surprised his teachers with how quickly he learned words and numbers. By 5, he was reading books far above his grade level. Not just fairy tales, but encyclopedias and science magazines. But what really fascinated him was the law. While most kids were watching cartoons, Jayden was hooked on courtroom shows like Judge Judy, Law and Order, and old reruns of Perry Mason that he found on YouTube. He didn't just watch, he studied. He paused scenes, asked questions, even rewound parts to better understand legal terms. Why did the judge say that? Why did that lawyer object? What's cross-examination? Kendra used to laugh and shake her head. Boy, you've got the brain of a grown man. Are you sure you're only 8? But to Jayden, it wasn't just a fun interest. He saw the law as a way to fight unfairness. And in his young life, he had already seen plenty of that. He noticed how his mom was treated differently at work sometimes. How people would call her aggressive just for speaking her mind. He saw how she worked double shifts and still got passed over for promotions. He didn't know all the words to describe it back then, but he felt the injustice. So when his mother was falsely accused, something inside Jayden snapped. He knew she didn't do it, not just because she was his mom, but because he had watched her sacrifice every day for years, never cutting corners, never complaining, never even keeping change that wasn't hers. When Kendra told him her court date was coming and that her lawyer barely returned her calls, Jayden quietly went to his room, sat on the floor, and pulled out his old tablet. It had cracks on the screen and ran slowly, but it was enough. He opened Google and began searching. What happens in a theft trial? How to defend someone in court? Can someone go to jail without evidence? At first, it was just curiosity, but then he started connecting the dots. He pulled out the printed paperwork his mom had left on the kitchen counter, court notices, the manager's complaint, and the lawyer's brief email responses. Things others didn't. Like the timestamps on the video footage, they didn't match the store's reported inventory logs. The so-called witness, who said Kendra was near the stockroom, that employee had gone on break during that exact time, according to the shift schedule Jayden found in his mom's bag. And just like that, Jayden had a realization. No one's going to fight for her like I will. That night, he sat at the dinner table with a serious look on his face. He had organized the evidence in a folder and highlighted the points he thought were important. His little fingers tapped the papers as he spoke. Mom, he said, I think I can help. Kendra looked at him and smiled tiredly. I know, baby. You already do. Just praying with me and being strong is enough. But Jayden wasn't done. No, I mean really help. I've been reading everything. I know the case. I know what went wrong. You need someone who's actually paying attention, and that's me. Kendra paused. Jayden, this isn't a school project, sweetheart. This is court. This is serious. Adults yelling in suits. Judges. Prosecutors. You can't just walk in and... I don't want to watch you go to jail for something you didn't do, Jayden said quietly, his voice starting to crack. I have to try. Tears welled up in Kendra's eyes. She saw the fire in her son's gaze. Not anger, not fear, but something more powerful, conviction. That weekend, they sat together at the dining table. Jayden organized his arguments, practiced speaking slowly and clearly, and even printed definitions of legal terms in case the judge asked. Kendra couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Her little boy wasn't just playing lawyer. He was preparing like one. By Sunday night, Jayden turned to her and said, If the judge lets me talk, I'll make them listen. The bailiff's voice echoed through the courtroom as Judge Raymond H. Preston entered. The sound of shuffling papers and murmurs died down as everyone stood. This was supposed to be just another routine hearing, another case on the docket, another name in the system. No one, not even the judge, had any idea that today would be anything but ordinary. Kendra Williams stood at the defendant's table, her heart pounding. She wore her best outfit, a plain navy blue blouse and gray slacks, clothes she used to wear to work. Her public defender stood next to her, barely holding a folder. He hadn't even asked her any real questions before today. To him, she was just another case number. Sitting quietly in the gallery, just behind the defense table, was Jayden, her 8-year-old son. He looked small in the oversized wooden bench, but he was alert, his back straight, his eyes focused. Dressed in a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt and clip-on tie, He held a folder in his lap, not with drawings or comic books, but legal notes he had studied for days. The prosecution went first. The store's manager testified coldly, accusing Kendra of theft. He said she had been caught sneaking into the stockroom and hinted at missing items. Yet no concrete evidence was offered. The footage they played was blurry and showed a woman from behind, walking in a store aisle, far from damning, but the prosecutor spun the narrative as if it were open and shut. Kendra's attorney gave a brief, weak response. He didn't challenge the credibility of the video or press the manager on inconsistencies. He didn't even question why the so-called witness hadn't been brought to testify. When he finished speaking, the judge looked disappointed. It was clear the defense had done almost nothing. Judge Preston sighed. Does the defense wish to add anything further? For a few seconds, there was silence. Then, from behind the table, a small hand rose. Your Honor, Jayden said, standing up. May I speak on behalf of my mother? Heads turned instantly, so people chuckled under their breath. A child? In court? Speaking for the defense? The judge adjusted his glasses and blinked. I'm sorry, young man. Who are you? I'm Jayden Williams, he said proudly, Kendra's son. Kendra turned around, startled. Jayden, sit down, she whispered. But Jayden didn't sit. He looked the judge in the eye. I know I'm not a lawyer. I know I'm just a kid. But I've read everything about this case. I studied all the evidence, and I believe my mom is being accused unfairly. Please, I just want to speak the truth. The courtroom froze. The prosecutor looked amused. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. But the judge held up his hand. Let him speak, Judge Preston said, his voice calm but curious. Let's hear what the boy has to say. Gasps filled the room. Jayden walked slowly to the front, his little shoes tapping on the courtroom floor. He climbed onto a wooden stool, placed his folder on the stand, and looked up at the judge with the confidence of someone far beyond his years. Then he began to speak. He didn't ramble. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He presented. According to the report, he said, pointing to the document, the theft happened during my mom's shift on the 14th. But I checked her time card. She clocked out 30 minutes before the store closed. And this blurry video? It's time-stamped after she left. Look right here. He showed the footage and cross-referenced the time with the store's digital clock system, which had been off by a few minutes. He continued. The employee who claimed to see her near the stockroom was actually on break. Here's the break schedule from the employee lounge. I printed it. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Jayden wasn't just making points. He was poking holes in the entire accusation. He paused and looked at the manager. You said my mom was acting suspicious that week, but she worked overtime because someone else was out sick. You didn't mention that, did you? The manager shifted uncomfortably. Jayden's voice softened as he ended. My mom wakes up every day at 5 a.m. She works 2 jobs. She comes home and still helps me with homework. If she ever took anything, it was probably a breath because she barely has time to breathe. That's not a thief. That's a good person. The room was silent. Even the prosecutor looked stunned. The judge leaned back, visibly moved. Young man, thank you, he said after a long pause. You've given this court a lot to think about. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. No one moved. No one whispered. Even the court clerk had stopped typing. The air was thick, not with tension, but with awe. Judge Raymond H. Preston took off his glasses slowly and folded his hands in front of him. He stared at Jayden for several seconds, his face unreadable. Then, he turned to the prosecution. Mr. Carter, the judge said calmly, do you have any response to the points the boy has just made? The prosecutor, who had moments earlier been smiling smugly, was now flipping through his papers like a man who'd misplaced something very important, his confidence. He cleared his throat. Your Honor, while the young man's presentation was certainly impressive for his age, I believe we still have reasonable suspicion in the store's internal report, which you failed to corroborate with clear evidence. The judge interrupted. There it was, a subtle shift in power. Until Jayden spoke, the courtroom had leaned in the prosecution's favor. Kendra's assigned lawyer had barely put up a defense. The evidence was shaky but unchecked, and the manager's words had gone unchallenged. But now, with clear logic and sharp observations, a child, had dismantled the entire case in less than 10 minutes. The judge turned to Kendra's attorney. "Do you wish to add anything further?" Caught off guard, the public defender stammered, "No, Your Honor. I believe the boy, Mr. Jayden, summarized the key issues quite thoroughly." Kendra looked over at her son in disbelief. Her heart was full, not just of love, but of amazement. She had always known Jayden was smart, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. And still, he remained calm, focused, poised like a lawyer trained for years, not a boy who had just turned 8. The judge leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. In light of the statements made and the clear contradictions brought to attention by this young man, he began, "I am ordering a temporary recess while I review all submitted documents and the evidence more closely." He paused, then looked directly at Jayden. "You've done something remarkable here today. Court will reconvene in 30 minutes. He banged his gavel once. The room exploded into whispers and murmurs as the judge exited. People from the gallery turned to look at Jayden. A few even applauded quietly. A local journalist sitting in the back pulled out his phone and began typing furiously. Jayden stepped down from the stand and walked back to his mom, clutching his folder. Kendra knelt down and hugged him, holding him close. "I can't believe what you just did," she whispered. Jayden looked up at her and smiled. "I just told the truth." 30 minutes later, the courtroom was filled again, but this time the energy was different. There was a buzz, an electricity that hadn't been there earlier. People leaned forward in their seats, waiting. Judge Preston returned and sat quietly for a moment, reviewing his notes. Then he spoke. After careful consideration of the timeline inconsistencies, the questionable nature of the evidence, and the well-articulated concerns raised by young Mr. Jayden Williams, this court finds that there is insufficient evidence to move forward with the charges. He looked up directly at Kendra. "All charges against Ms. Kendra Williams are hereby dropped." Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Kendra covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. People clapped. Even one of the jurors stood up and nodded in Jayden's direction. The manager from the store quickly gathered his papers and slipped out, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The prosecutor just stared, stunned, as the ruling echoed in his ears. Jayden, still holding his now slightly crumpled folder, turned and looked up at the judge. "Thank you," he said. "No," Judge Preston replied. "Thank you, young man. You reminded this courtroom what justice really means." Outside the courthouse, news crews had already gathered. Word had spread about the little boy who defended his mother, stood up to a system built for adults, and turned the case around with logic, grace, and truth. But to Jayden, the cameras didn't matter. The headlines didn't matter. He wasn't trying to be famous. He just wanted one thing: justice for his mom. And now he had delivered it. The courtroom may have gone quiet, but the world outside was about to roar. News of Jayden Williams, the 8-year-old boy who defended his mother in court and stunned a judge with his legal brilliance, spread like wildfire. Within hours of the verdict being dismissed, videos of his calm, articulate courtroom performance had gone viral across social media. Headlines appeared on major news sites. 8-year-old legal prodigy shocks courtroom. Boy defends mom, wins case, and hearts. Child lawyer? Not quite, but he just might be the future. TV crews gathered outside Kendra's small apartment complex the next morning. Reporters knocked on her door, asking for interviews. Everyone wanted to hear from a young boy who turned the justice system on its head. But Jayden, ever humble, didn't seek the spotlight. "I just wanted to help my mom," he said during a brief interview on the local news. "She didn't do anything wrong. I saw something unfair, and I wanted to make it right." That simple statement touched millions of hearts. From law professors to social workers, from parents to students. People from all walks of life flooded the internet with praise, calling Jayden an inspiration. Prominent lawyers and civil rights organizations publicly applauded his clarity, courage, and emotional intelligence. Many said they hadn't seen such raw courtroom instinct in adults, let alone a child. Even the judge, Raymond H. Preston, released a rare public comment. Jayden Williams reminded us that truth knows no age. In a system often dominated by rules and roles, sometimes it takes a child to speak plainly and bring justice to light. But beyond the headlines and hashtags, the biggest changes were happening quietly in the life of Jayden and his mother. For Kendra, the nightmare was finally over. She had been cleared of all charges, but more than that, she was cleared in the eyes of her community. Friends and co-workers who had once doubted her now came forward to apologize. A few even started a GoFundMe campaign to help her recover the wages she'd lost and support Jayden's dreams. Then came the biggest surprise of all, letters from some of the most prestigious law schools in the country. Harvard, Yale, Howard University, Stanford, each one expressing admiration for Jayden and offering mentorship programs, early outreach opportunities, and even future scholarship consideration. One letter read, "While you're too young to apply right now, we want you to know a place will always be waiting for you when the time comes." Jayden's school also honored him at a special assembly. His classmates, once just kids who played tag and traded snacks with him, now saw him in a whole new light. They called him Jayden the Judge or Mr. Lawyer. The school librarian created a display of law books with his photo at the center, encouraging students to dream big, just like Jayden did. But even with all the attention, Jayden stayed grounded. "I'm still me," he told his teacher when asked how he felt about being famous. "I just really like figuring things out." He went back to watching courtroom videos at night. Now, with even more passion, he started reading beginner law textbooks, and sometimes he and his mom would pretend to have mock trials at the kitchen table. Kendra, now working at a better job with a fair boss and regular hours, said, "He saved my life, but not just in court. He gave me my pride back." What was once a painful story of injustice had transformed into a symbol of hope, reminding people everywhere that courage and truth don't come with age requirements. In communities across the country, Jayden's story sparked conversations about justice, race, family, and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. He became a symbol not just of intelligence, but of heart, of the love between a mother and her son, of how one small voice can shake even the oldest, strongest walls of power. And as for Jayden's future, well, the world is watching. But he's in no rush. He still rides his bike after school, plays chess with his uncle, and reads books in bed with a flashlight long after bedtime. Because after all, he's still a kid. But one thing is clear. He's no ordinary kid. He's a hero, a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truth. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who believes in justice, family, and standing up for what's right. And remember, you don't need a law degree to speak the truth. You just need courage.